Today we are working on Psalm 142. Some of the traditional magical uses that you'll find for Psalm 142 are for releasing someone from prison, overcoming distressing situations, and also to alleviate pain and suffering. And I think that's a good one. So today, let's use Psalm 142 to alleviate pain and or suffering. And this can be any kind of pain and suffering, whether it's physical, emotional, mental. And the way we work psalm magic is very simple, easy, and effective. We take the psalm in question, this one is Psalm 142, and we recite it out loud all the way through once without stopping. And that's called an incantation in this psalmic tradition. And then we go back through that same psalm and we take it one verse at a time. And we search for hidden occult meanings that we find in the psalm. We call those magic seeds. When we're searching, digging, finding, and applying what we find in the psalm to the situation we bring to the psalm, what we're doing is not only discovering those magical seeds, but we are planting those magical seeds into the fertile grounds of our minds, where they take root, grow, blossom forth, and bear fruit after their kind. And that's exactly what you and I are going to do together right now with Psalm 142. I cried unto the Lord with my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication. I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then I knewest my path. In the way wherein I walked have they privily laid a snare for me. I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. I cried unto thee, O Lord, I said, Thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise thy name. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. So this is one of those lamenting psalms. And I love a good lament, don't you? Don't you get a little bit sick of always thinking, well, I got to think positively. Better put a positive spin on this. Well, the Psalms don't make us do that. The Psalms don't force us into pouring pink paint over our problems. The Psalms direct us right straight into them. And today we've decided that we're going to look at pain and suffering and use the Psalm to alleviate pain and suffering in our lives. So the first thing you have to do is notice the problem. It's been stated that if you can understand a problem, that's the only way you can have power over it. And that's exactly what the psalm is directing us to do. It's talking about the Lord, and we always want to orient ourselves to that power first before we continue with this work. Having a religious understanding of God is very different than having a magical understanding of God, because magic isn't superstitious, not if it's done effectively. And so when we think of God, we're not thinking of a dude up in the sky on a throne hurling down blessings or curses or whatever we're taught that this deity does. Instead, we are understanding that the Lord in the Psalms is the one power, the one source, the one force, the one substance in all the universe. And it's something that we are an extension of. Infinite intelligence, or the Lord as it's called in the Psalms, extends itself as you in all your uniqueness. That's called a soul. And when you are an extension of infinite intelligence as a soul, you have rights and privileges. And see, the thing is we were given free will. When we were extended as souls, or when we are extended as souls, we are free to think any way we want to think. Now, thinking contrary to the way God thinks doesn't make our thoughts true, but we are allowed to think them anyway, which means that we can build up worlds in our imagination that exist in our experience, even though from God's perspective, they are not objectively true. And this is where we have problems. This is where we have pain. This is where we have suffering. This is where we have these problems on this earth. It's not because God wills for these problems. It's because we don't want to experience ourselves as who we are as souls. We want to experience ourselves as separate individuals. And it's nothing that you should feel guilty about. It's something that we all fell into. This is like a giant conspiracy of our ego. Once we recognize that's true, when we turn to infinite intelligence in these Psalms, we understand that the solution to these problems comes from us reconnecting in our minds with the truth and allowing the truth to shine away all of these illusions, including our pain and suffering. So it says, I cried unto the Lord with my voice. Two things. When you put something in the past tense, it makes it more powerful in magic because it's establishing it as already a fact. I cried. To cry unto the Lord is very frequently how we start out this kind of magic, because it's recognizing that we have to get the ball rolling. We have to be the catalyst. We can't just say, well, why doesn't God fix this for me? God didn't make the problem to begin with. So since we have free will to have our lives any way we decide to think about them, when we realize that we painted ourselves into a corner as a species, and then here as individuals are reaping the results of that, we have to be the ones to instigate the healing. We have to be the ones to call and turn to that power so that power can work through us. So we cried unto the Lord with my voice. Now, your voice can be your physical voice, but there is a spiritual voice that you have. There's a magical voice that you have, and that is the voice of your soul. And when you cry to the Lord with your internal voice, with your magical voice, that means that you are connecting, you are linking up with that infinite intelligence. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. With my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication. Now, when we're supplicating here, we're not saying, I am this lowly worm, please have mercy on me. That's not what we mean. We are saying, I recognize that I didn't create myself. And that's my whole problem, is that I've got all these self-created ideas, and those have resulted in pain and suffering. And so now I'm recognizing that you created me, and that I'm an extension of you, and that extension is perfect, and that extension doesn't have pain and suffering because you don't will pain and suffering. So I want to move out of the false world of the human ego mind and into the real world of who you created me to be as a soul, which is free from pain and suffering. I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble. And that's what we have to do. You can't just say, fix things for me. You have to understand them. So now what we're saying is, now I have already done this, infinite intelligence. I know what my problem is. I have this pain. I have this suffering. I understand it. I understand that not only do I have this experience, but I understand that it's not your will for me to have this pain and suffering. I understand that. I've done my homework. I've done my part, and now it's time for you to do your part. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then thou knewest my path. Now, when your spirit is overwhelmed within you, this is not talking about how your soul is suffering, because your soul doesn't suffer. It's not how it works. The spirit being overwhelmed within you is you being at odds with your soul. And when you're feeling at odds with your soul, you are feeling overwhelmed. You are feeling out of sorts. You are feeling a lack of peace. And when you recognize that you are not in peace, then you call on infinite intelligence to show you your path, to show you the course of your star, the course of your soul. So if I'm not at peace, I recognize if I'm not at peace, then I must have made some kind of wrong decision along the line. And I don't want to try to figure that out by myself because I keep getting lost in it. So I'm turning to infinite intelligence, who knows my course, who knows where I'm supposed to be. And I'm asking that you show me. Okay, in the way wherein I walked, they have privily laid a snare for me. Now, this is talking about your enemies, your oppressors. Now, ultimately, if you have oppressors that are causing pain and suffering, if that's part of it, they will be taken care of with this psalm. But right now, we're talking about the pain and suffering themselves as being your oppressors. It seems like no matter when you're going through something that's a lot of pain and suffering, it seems like no matter what you do, when you try to finally seem like you might be getting a little relief, it finds another way in. There's just another way. And that's how the ego is. The ego loves to lay little traps for us because it knows that if we understood what the ego really was, we'd just give it up. So rather than saying, hey, I'm your ego, I'm thinking separate from God, and if you think along with me, you're going to have pain and suffering. Don't you want some? You know, it knows if it did that, you'd say, no, thank you, and we wouldn't go down that road. So instead, it's sly, it's cunning, it's baffling, and it likes to put little hooks in our path to lay down problems that are not solvable. And that's what it trades in. That's what our ego trades in, is problems that appear to be unsolvable. The ego likes to dangle carrots. Oh, there's relief over here. There's relief over here. But its whole game is getting you to seek for things, but never find them. Because the ego doesn't want you to know that it can't find relief. All it can do is dangle carrots. All it can do is lay traps. It has no answers for you because it's nothing. The ego is nothing more than a habit of thinking separately from infinite intelligence. You can only get what you want when you are in alignment with who you are as a soul, as an extension of infinite intelligence. And if you're thinking that you're not that, then you're just going to keep going up against wall after wall, block after block, roadblock after roadblock. The ego just likes to keep us busy, searching for answers to these problems that appear to be unsolvable. So that's the game that we play. Privily laying snares for ourselves. I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. So, for one thing, on your right hand is where, in these ancient texts, that's where you would either wield a sword, wield a pen, or get your nourishment, because back in the day they thought everybody was right-handed. so when you looked at your right hand to find comfort, to find aid, to find assistance, and you realized nobody was there for you, nothing was there for you, that means all your old tricks aren't working. Everything that you used to be able to do to sort of like get through, they're not working anymore. Now, for most of us, when we realize that's happening, our first response is, oh no. But in reality, when all your stuff doesn't work for you anymore, that's actually a good thing, because that means that you can finally realize none of this is working. Nothing in my life is working. There's no way out of this that I can find on my own. Therefore, I have to turn to infinite intelligence because it's the only thing I have left, because I can't figure this out anymore. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. So you can't run and hide from this pain and suffering anymore. Your old wand doesn't work. You can't wave your old wand over this and make it go away. It's not working anymore. And when it says that no man cared for my soul, for one thing, it's talking about feeling isolated. It's feeling isolated all by yourself. That's a definite indicator of ego consciousness, but it also is coming to the realization that nothing that you thought was valuable is offering you any repose. Nothing that you have ever thought was valuable or important is offering you any relief from this. I cried unto thee, O Lord, I said, thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living. So again, we're putting it in the past tense and we're crying. Again, we're making the first step. But now, instead of calling to infinite intelligence and saying, everything's horrible, now that I've gone through that lament, now I'm understanding that you can help me. You can deliver me from this, because you're my portion in the land of the living. We think our portion is money. We think our portion is food. We think our portion is things. We think our portion is relationships. We think our portion is political power. We think our portion is all kinds of things in this finite world. And now we're understanding, no, the only portion that I have is the source out of which I draw my entire existence, from which I am an extension. And since infinite intelligence is immortal and never changes and is constant, the extensions of infinite intelligence are immortal, constant, and never changing. And that's who your soul is. And so when we start to get this cognitive dissonance between who we are as egos versus who we are as souls, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because then we can cry unto the Lord and say, "Thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living." Not when I die, not sometime off in some fictional heaven, but right now, in this life, with these problems, these people, these circumstances, these situations, all of this, infinite intelligence is my portion. So not only do I no longer seek refuge from the world for the problems, I seek infinite intelligence, but I'm recognizing that infinite intelligence is the source of everything that is good in this world. So not only do I recognize that I can look to infinite intelligence to release me from the pain and suffering, but also I can look to infinite intelligence to go beyond that for my entire portion here. And my portion meaning my inheritance. Infinite intelligence will for me is not just to get over feeling pain and suffering, but to thrive, to do well, to have everything turn out well for me. It's much bigger than just releasing me from pain and suffering. It's to completely transform my experience in this world, the land of the living, not after I die. Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. You know, that's so important to understand. Maybe you do have persecutors in the world that feel stronger than you. Great, we'll bring those right into this psalm and they will be taken care of. But the biggest persecutor that is stronger than you is that ego mind. See, a lot of us think that's okay, I can fix that. I know how to change my thinking. I can think my way out of this. I can stop thinking as an ego and I can think as my soul. I can do that all by myself. But you can't. But you can't, because you're too smart. You're too brilliant. You're too much of a genius. We are so brilliant as individual souls that when we created this idea of the ego, we did it in a way that there is no escape. There is no escape. We are complete, total, absolute geniuses about it. But infinite intelligence is not bound by that. Infinite intelligence is not bound by our miscreations. Infinite intelligence is not bound by our rules and by our laws that we have concocted for ourselves. And therefore, when we turn to infinite intelligence can say, yeah, no, that's not true. None of this is true. I will lift you out of this. But you see, we have to ask for infinite intelligence to do it for us, because at this point, until we have cleansed ourselves, our minds of these tendencies toward egoic thinking, we can't trust ourselves. We can't be trusted to completely transform our thinking. We have to ask infinite intelligence to do it on our behalf. And that's what we're doing here. Because your ego is stronger than you in that regard, at least right now, because of the way you set it up. Bring my soul out of prison that I may praise thy name. So this is when a lot of the people that are coming to this psalm, trying to release themselves or a loved one out of prison, it's actually very literal here. But if you're not in a physical prison, it's still a very important part of this psalm, because you are a prisoner here. You are a prisoner. You are isolated, completely isolated. That's the problem. The ego's got you locked up in the mind of its making. It's got you locked up thinking that there's no help for you. You're all by yourself. You have to come up with clever ideas to figure stuff out, and none of that's ultimately true. So when it says, bring my soul out of prison that I may praise thy name, on one hand, it's bargaining with God. Well, if you release me from prison, then I will be there to praise your name. That's one way to look at this. But I look at it the opposite. I say, by praising the name of God, I am released from prison. Now, what is praising the name of God? The name of God is the nature of God. For instance, in my basic angel magic course, I think it's the lesson number 6, we give a whole list of all the different qualities of God. And I've also got videos on this. And we list 8. There's as many as you can think of. But the idea of infinite life, infinite soul, infinite spirit, infinite intelligence, infinite truth, infinite love, infinite law, infinite presence, those ideas, those are the names of God. When you praise the name of God, what you're doing is you're getting very enthusiastic about how happy you are that there is infinite soul, that there is infinite intelligence. And you just focus your mind on one or more of those qualities and praise it by getting excited, by getting appreciative of it. And by doing that, what you do is you then turn your entire consciousness from that which is the ego to that which is your soul. And that's how you are released from prison, is through that act of praising the name of God. But remember that praising the name of God has to be a magical act. It can't be this superstitious religion that you just go, Yahweh, I praise you, and I'm jumping up and down. It might make you feel better in the moment, but it's not the same as understanding that the name of God means the nature of God, and praising means to get enthusiastically appreciative of the fact that it is a truth. What that does is that solidifies within your mind your connection to infinite intelligence, which then burns away the illusion. And that's how you are released from prison, because you recognize that the prison never really existed. Remember that you couldn't do that by yourself. You had to do that by connecting with infinite intelligence. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. Now we're recognizing, well, once I have this, then I'm no longer isolated. That's the quote, death of the ego right there, because as soon as you recognize you're not isolated, you're not all by yourself, you're one with all of creation. Every single person is its own star in this galaxy, and we're all in perfect infinite harmony as souls in the company of souls, stars in the company of stars, and everything works perfectly. And there is no ego, and there is no drama, and there is no pain, there is no suffering. None of that really exists. Once you really can pull back and see yourself cosmically rather than egoically. I remember once when I was probably 18, I bounced a bunch of checks because I wasn't very good with my checking account yet. It was all new to me, and I was so upset and so distraught, about this. And somebody said, but when you think of who you are inside the big cosmos, does it really matter? When you think about, how the whole cosmos is set up, do you think that ultimately your little bounce check really matters? And that gave me such relief in the moment. And after that relief in the moment, then I was able to conceive of how I could fix this and change it and get things working again. And it's a very similar kind of concept here when it talks about that. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. That's exactly what's already happening. On a cosmic level, God always deals bountifully with you. Always. And you're always surrounded by righteousness. That's the truth. And now we're waking up from that nightmare that you're in pain and suffering and recognizing that no, you are a star in the company of stars. You are a powerful soul, and you have righteous work to do here. And therefore, infinite intelligence's will for you is that you be happy, that you be free, that you have not only the relief of this pain and suffering, but then you thrive. So you just keep coming back to the same psalm every single day until you get a sense of peace and certainty that your desire or that your goal or that your problem has been handled. And once you get that sense of peace and certainty that all is working properly, then you can stop casting that spell and move on to something else. Thank you so much for joining me today. Until next time, blessed be.